Hey friends, this is Jeff. Big month for us on YouTube and Patreon. We will continue to release our best content on these platforms moving forward. Well worth subscribing to Patreon and YouTube. The links are in the show notes. And speaking of Patreon, all of our Patreon releases flow easily into your podcast feed. So once you sign up, you can simply listen to them right there on your podcast platform of choice. This November 2024, we will be posting 3 very long, like 2-3 hour long interviews with the most informed people we know about their Enneagram type. The first up is Dr. Mary Slattery, Enneagram 6. Dr. Slattery has studied Enneagram under all the most amazing thinkers and routinely elevates the hearts of 6s in ways I have heard nowhere else. Lots of clarity and wisdom, and her interview will post November 8th. Next is the Joel Stabile, talking shop about Enneagram 7s. Joel, likewise, may have more conversations with Enneagram scholars than anybody else on the planet, and he is able to articulate the heart of 7s with real insight and understanding. That will post on November 15th. And lastly is our good friend Erica Jobs. Erica had one of the very first Enneagram podcasts, and as an Enneagram 8 has sat in this material for over 10 years. Her perspective on Enneagram is different than ours, but she is also responsible for some of the real breakthroughs TJ and I have had in understanding Enneagram. This is some of our best work and will be the Patreon releases for November. Then, coming in December 2024, we are going to release the next 3 drafted chapters of our upcoming book, Around the Circle. So more than half of our new book is up online for you to digest. Again, if you sign up for a paid membership prior to January 1st, we will send you 2 signed books. In 2025, we will send you the physical published version of Around the Circle next year, as well as a signed first edition of my first book, 7. We will also answer up to 3 Enneagram questions per month for you, and you will get the sheer joy and delight of helping us help other people find and enjoy the Enneagram. That's our plug. Thanks for listening. May all good things be yours. I'm Jeff Cook.
And I'm TJ Wilson.
And this is Around the Circle.
I'm walking slowly, I'm taking my time. All I could talking is starting to rhyme. I'm letting go of lonely, letting go of strife. I just can't get enough of this beautiful life.
The Enneagram is a map of the human personality. It's a tool for navigating relationships. It creates language for what motivates us and helps us look at the way we look at everything else. Most importantly, the Enneagram's a mirror because sometimes you need help seeing yourself. My name's Jeff Cook. I'm a philosopher in Greeley, Colorado, and with me is TJ Wilson, businessman, lover of theology, and Enneagram ninja.
Hello.
Boss.
Hey.
All right, so we had a guest who couldn't make it, and I've had on my sheet, my plan, if this ever happens, I'm going to go to the Chat GPT and kick out 100 questions and just answer them and see what happens. And so guess what?
Is that what we're doing?
Today is the day.
Okay.
Today is the day that large language models are just going to assemble all the information on the interweb and throw it into 100 questions for us.
Do I have your permission to make fun of AI?
Oh, this particular podcast is not going to work if we don't make fun of these questions the entire time. So
That's smart. Yep. Good. I'll represent the Luddites. And
in good news, I have briefly skimmed, and what ends up happening is a lot of the misconceptions about Enneagram are all over these questions.
Sure.
And so this will be a good place for us to talk shop about introductory matters, clarify some misconceptions, and make fun of the internet. All of these things are worth our time.
Love it. Artificial intelligence, my butt doesn't even know about the Enneagram.
Clearly hasn't listened to our podcast enough.
I'm all right with that.
All right. Well, starting with, hopefully we'll pick we'll see how far this goes. Who knows? This might be 50 questions. It might be 100 questions. We'll see. So in order to make this work, our answers, it will be helpful if they're short.
Okay.
because if they're short, I can post them. But
It
go
is
along if
the
you need
soul
to.
of wit.
That's right.
So-
That's right. It's too bad neither of us are witty. We're
Oops.
kind of screwed on that front. All right. So, TJ Wilson, question number 1.
Hit me.
What is the Enneagram?
It's a map of human personality.
Did you listen to the intro?
It is something like a personality typing system that actually wants to discuss the question, what motivates us, and give us guidance and language about how to get out of the box that we have found ourselves in our lives.
I think that's right. Personality typing system. The only thing I'd add is it says really just 9 big motives. And each of us display a primary one of these 9 motives. And if you can name that motive, you can talk about yourself at some really fantastic levels. And that's why it's worth getting into.
Yep.
Number 2, how does the Enneagram differ from other personality typing systems?
Yeah, most personality systems are based on behavior, and Enneagram wants to talk about motivation. We can do the same things with completely different motivation, and that's what the Enneagram is about.
Yep. Be my answer as well. It focuses on motive. And man, that's just it. We flying. Question 3. What are the Enneagram types? I think saying like big idea, what is a type, is a worthwhile place to go. So the word type comes from an old word meaning a blow. Like if you hit something hard with a hammer, it would create a type. A typos is the Greek word. And this is where we get the word typewriter. Like you have the blow of the thingy, the army thingy with the letter that hits the paper, and it leaves the type on the paper. It leaves a character on the paper. And we use, human beings have used this language for themselves. It's like the world kind of interacts with us, and we interact with the world. And when we interact with the world, we expose kind of the type, the mark that's on us. We expose our character. Type reveals your insides. And that's what Enneagram wants to do. It wants to show you what, like, your mark, your type, your archetype is. And again, use language that allows that to not only be, at a superficial level, this is the type of Harry Potter character that you share the same archetype with. That's fun at one level, but when you really start doing some work on yourself and your relationships, how you come to the world, type can be incredibly valuable as a tool to understand who you are, where you struggle, and where you really thrive. Question 4. How do I find my Enneagram type?
Well, the best way to do it, I think, is to listen to the Start Here podcast.
Yes.
And go through the material and then decide on your own.
We have put together a fantastic tool for finding your Enneagram type. Start Here podcast. It's got our little Enneagram symbol on it. And we spend a handful of recordings just kind of setting everybody up so that they can find their type in a way that's easy. Aside from that, say you were to skip the best tool, the best test, just finding your type, what does that look like?
I think the best way to do it is to find an intro book and just read through it.
Yeah.
Spend some time with the types, with the descriptions of the types, and come to it on a little bit on your own. If you need help, then finding a coach is also a really good idea.
Sometimes there are a bunch of Enneagram podcasts out there that are interviews. That's another way that you could do it, is just start listening to those and listen for somebody being interviewed who you say, oh, that's me.
Yeah.
But that also might take a while and it'd be kind of tricky at first. So I like your recommendation. Question 5, can a person's Enneagram type change over time?
We believe that your type is fixed, whether you come out of the womb with it or whether it solidifies in your early childhood, doesn't really matter. The point is your Enneagram type is fixed. That does not mean you always present that way, but your type doesn't actually change over the course of your life.
I agree. And this has become one of those empirical things. Like if we saw people's type changing over time, a lot of us who do Enneagram would jump on board and say, hey, you can kind of change your type. Right. And the thing is, we just don't see that happening.
Right.
And so there's some real foundational matters about your motive that apparently just stick from
Yep.
very, very early on in your life. Question number 6. What are some criticisms of the Enneagram and how can they be addressed?
Well, the first one I know of is that the symbol looks like an occult symbol, but that's really because people aren't looking at it and they don't understand how symbols work. I'm not trying to be mean, but the pentagram is a thing. The Enneagram is a different thing.
Mm-hmm. Why is it that teachers always gave you satanic symbols on your math homework when you did well? It was these stars. You get these, like, it's
Right.
just the occult is everywhere, apparently.
It's I'm going to go bad places if we continue on this path.
In my mind, the best criticisms remain something to the extent of there's not enough great literature out there scientifically verifying Enneagram. In wonderful news, for those of you who are interested, you are welcome to jump into attachment theory and object relation theory. These are both well-established psychological theories with tons and tons and tons of literature.
Yep.
They are articulating nearly identically everything that the Enneagram wants to say. Enneagram is asking different kinds of questions and coming to the material in from a different vantage. But the root there, what's being exposed, look for attachment theory, look for object relation theory. These will scratch your itch.
Yep.
Question 7. How has the Enneagram evolved over time?
Well, everyone who teaches it adds their own flavor to it. So, like, all of us who have had a hand in spreading the Enneagram have changed it in some ways.
You need to sell something new. And so you have to have your variation, your spin on it so that you can sell your product for $195 online.
Yep. Exactly.
There's actually, as we get through some of these other questions, we're going to see a lot of the places that, you know, there's been theory has shifted, integration, disintegration, how wings work. You know, that's the two that really come to mind.
Yeah. And I think we're also, a lot of us are discovering new depths. Mm-hmm. The more and more people look into the Enneagram, the less have to spend time on the surface, and so you can do a little bit more digging and more digging and more digging, and the people who are doing the real work are like they're uncovering new concepts, new triads, new ways to talk about the same things.
Just in terms of academic disciplines, this is how academic disciplines work. It's like you have a field of study, and then you get more nuanced, and you ask new and different questions, and you build on what's before you, and some things get corrected, but oftentimes you see, no, there's a conversation being had over time through various different people. And that if Enneagram really is exposing something that's part of the world and human beings, that's what we should expect.
Right.
Question number 8. Can the Enneagram be misused?
Yeah, totally. Anybody can misuse anything. One of the number one ways is typing other people. Mm-hmm. That's the number one rule for all of the Enneagram is you're not allowed to type other people because you cannot name their motivation.
Yep. It seems to me that bad people can easily use the Enneagram to gaslight, to manipulate, to poke. One of the things that we've seen is oftentimes the way that we don't want to be treated is a way that we, given our type, is a way that we commonly weaponize our own type towards others. So, like, I don't want to be judged, and when I get ferocious towards another, will become very judgmental.
Sure.
And this is a common way that we see that it's not misusing the Enneagram, I suppose, but you can see where I'm going there.
Yeah. I also want to say that lots of people will use the Enneagram to excuse their bad behavior. True. And that's not what it's for. It's not giving you permission to be a jerk. It's not giving you permission to be selfish or all of these other things. It is wanting to help you see that you are those things and then give you a path for how to not be that anymore.
Yeah, it's perfect. Question number 9. How did the Enneagram originate and what is its historic background?
Pass.
Yeah. But here's the thing about TJ and so my quick answer on this front ends up being, I'm sure that's important. I'm sure there's lots of people that want to dive into this. And like the history of psychology is important. The history of, any discipline is important. But in part, when you actually jump into a science and are using it as a tool, like I'm not concerned with the history of hammers when I grab a hammer or the history of drills when I'm using a drill.
Right.
What I want to know is like, what's the best use for this thing? And so TJ and I think have consistently kind of steered away from those questions because they're often asked by those who want to tear down the Enneagram and make it look silly. Right. I don't care. Like in part, I don't care where it came from. Mostly because I'm using something that really works.
Right.
And that's what I'm interested in.
Right. Yeah. And for the same reason that we don't need to know that democracy existed before the United States.
Right. Yeah.
In order to engage in democracy.
Yeah.
We don't need to know where the Enneagram came from in order for it to be useful in our lives.
Just because democracy was first practiced by Greek pagans does not negate it for all of you who think that that's a terrible thing, that everything Greek pagan is somehow satanic. American government, and most of its symbols, by the way. I mean, see the Parthenon and say, does this look like any of our government buildings? This is known as the genetic fallacy in philosophy, that you judge something based on its origins. So obviously we are opposed. We're opposed to logical fallacies here on the Around the Circle podcast.
Correct.
Question number 10. What role do the instinctual variants, social, sexual, self-preserving, play in shaping personality?
Ask me again in 5 years.
We just spent our whole summer on this.
That's true. And 5 years before that.
Yes.
Yeah. They play a role.
They play a role.
When you get to a spot where you are comfortable and familiar with other Enneagram terminology and like you've done some work, then it's a great idea to start figuring out what role they play.
Yep.
But they might complicate everything a little bit, so you might want to wait to look into instincts or subtypes because of how much it adds to the foundation that's already been laid.
We spent our whole summer doing, I want to say 8 or 9 podcasts on this topic, but it's a more complicated topic. The big idea being all of us, biology wants to say, all of us have filters for how we get what we need. There seems to be a move that I look for my own needs first, or I look for my partner, my mate's needs first, or I look out for the group's needs first. That's the big idea. When it comes to Enneagram, some folks have taken that biological idea and overlapped it with Enneagram types. And that can be real interesting, helpful, and it can also make things very messy. Right. And so that's why you should wait for a little bit before getting into instincts and subtypes.
Yep.
Question number 11. What are the wings and how do they influence a person's behavior?
The wings are the 2 types on either side within the symbol. So the wings for 9 are 8 and 1. The wings for 1 are 9 and 2, etc., all the way around the circle. And they, add a little flavor. And I think that's the best that can be said about it.
You have to dance when you get into your wings.
Yeah.
That's how that works.
They add a little flavor on either side.
I like the name wings when defining wings. In order to fly, you need 2 wings. And there's something about the Enneagram, in my mind and in TJ's, where we're seeking balance. You want to balance yourself as you are navigating the world. And so I'm a 1. To my left on the circle is 9. To my right is 2. And I balance by pushing into some of the best attributes of the 9 and 2. Now, just like everything in Enneagram, this does have a cost. There's always a shadow side or a negative side to nearly everything in the Enneagram. So I also struggle with some of the 9 struggles. I can engage sloth. I can become lazy in some spaces. It's also the case that just as 2s wrestle with pride, I can also struggle with pride. So there's all sorts of benefits to the number on your left and on your right. There's all sorts of, extra pitfalls, just something to be aware of, I suppose.
Yep. And if you have one wing that you've been using way too much in your life, then you're going to be off balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it's going to change the way you look. It's going to change the types of behaviors that you exhibit.
Yep. We're at 9. We should talk about that just for a bit. Their wings can have a self-protective element to them, that pushing hard. And in the past, TJ and I have talked about this as being like, imagine a man who's holding a very heavy weight in one hand. He may need to carry that right now. That might be just what needs to happen for him to get where he's going, but you can't be balanced there. And it's not a good way to walk. And if you push real hard into a wing, that seems to me to be, the situation you're in.
Right. Yeah.
Question number 12. How do the lines of integration and disintegration function in the Enneagram system?
Well, first off, we don't call them integration and disintegration. We call it stress and security. And the stress/disintegration line is that when things are breaking, when we can't get the things we want through our normal methods, when everything is going haywire outside of us and we're freaking out, we pick up some of the behavior and stress. We fall into this place of stress. And it's an automatic reaction, but over time, we can learn that there are actually really great things there that'll help keep us alive, better tools that we can grab to help us get back to the place that we need to be. And in the same way, when everything is going really well, when we're like chugging along and we're in our track and the things are working the way they're supposed to be, we can sometimes find ourselves picking up some of the behaviors from our security point. And that can be really healthy, or it can be really unhealthy, and we can become villains.
Enneagram's about motive. When you don't get your motive fulfilled and you're trying, sometimes you use other tools to get it fulfilled. And so you can get stressed out when your motive isn't being fulfilled, and you use those on your stress line to get it. So too, when your motive is thoroughly fulfilled, you often move in a different kind of way. It's that security move. So my motive's fulfilled. What do I do now? And you kind of take on some of the elements of your security number. And this is true. This is again one of those things that we see observationally. This is empirical. Like you can look across the 9 types and interview people, talk to them about what security looks like for them. Uniformly, it's that movement, and that's why people develop the symbol and the rest.
Mm-hmm.
Question number 13. What is the purpose of understanding the levels of development within the Enneagram? I think this is about Riso and Hudson's work, yeah?
Yeah, I think so too. Say, what's the purpose?
What's the purpose of understanding them?
Understanding that there are levels of health within your type. That's the bottom line. You can be unhealthy and still be your type, and you can be really healthy and still exhibit the things about your type.
Yep.
And the levels of health just help us see like how much our type is influencing our behavior, our decisions, etc.
There's very depthy material here by Riso and Hudson. TJ and I just generally refer to high side and low side. Levels of health generally are about your motive and whether or not you're acquiring your motive in a healthy way, productive way, a soul restorative way, or in a negative way. A way of excess is a common language used for the low side of your type. But high side, low side thinking is very helpful, and it can be applied both to motive, but it can also be applied to your stress move. Are you going high or low in stress? Are you going high and low in security? Nearly everything Enneagram, you can talk about kind of these high side, low side, healthy or unhealthy ways of engaging it.
Yep.
Question number 14. How do you describe the relationship between the Enneagram and spirituality?
Pass. It's there and sort of automatic if you want it. It's not that you don't have to do it if you don't want it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are fantastic folks who don't believe in a spiritual element who are doing Enneagram work. There's lots of great people who are doing great Enneagram work. In my experience reading them, it's really about the source of it seems like a lot of us have something that we would call our source. It's God, or it's our connection to the universe, or however you want to say. This is how I am in the world and connected to what matters most. And when you give that a name, Enneagram comes in and generally has a lot of wisdom to say there. And it seems to overlap with most mystical traditions as well as, again, the scientific traditions.
Yep.
Question number 15. How is the Enneagram used in a therapeutic context? Or perhaps how should it be used?
Huh. Interesting. I don't know how to say should. I think the Enneagram can be very, very useful if both parties know about the Enneagram. I think the biggest thing is that it gives space for common language and understanding. Like it gives us single words that represent big concepts within our behavior and our and even our motivation. It gives us space where we can come to the table understanding the things a little bit more similarly.
Yeah. I am not a therapist. I don't know the radar for therapists and what's seeking to be achieved aside from, I suppose you want this person to be more mentally healthy.
Sure.
But in terms of Enneagram, it is, I agree, it's common language that can be used to say, this is what I want and how I'm trying to get it. And here are some of the problems that are emerging as I'm going through life. That would probably, create a rich vocabulary of doing some work with somebody who's a professional.
Right. And I don't think it can be very, very helpful. And I don't think it's necessary. My therapist and I do not use Enneagram in discussion. We have talked about the Enneagram, but she is not super well versed on it. And so it's just not part of our thing. And we can still talk about all of the issues without using Enneagram language.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably better for me because that gets me away from some of the cheats, I
think that's helpful. You can know yourself and use Enneagram language with a therapist of saying, the descriptors for yourself. But especially if they don't know Enneagram, you're going to get a fresh take, on those ideas. That's good. Question 16. What's the significance of the triadic structure, head, heart, and gut in the Enneagram?
How much time do we have?
Minute 30.
The idea of head, heart, gut, of threeness has woven its way into so many parts of our universe and how we understand our universe.
Yep.
That it's also here.
Yeah.
I
think that I experience myself in a threefold way. I can talk very much about here's how I am emotionally. I can speak very clearly about here's where I am mentally. I can speak very clearly about this is where, my physical body and intuitions are right now. There is overlap, but there's also real distinction. And not only can I talk about myself in those three ways, head, heart, gut, there's not a lot to add. That's pretty much who I am. I am who I am mentally. I am who I am emotionally. And I am who I am in my physicality. And so this is one of those places. Enneagram is just giving language to what we already experience.
Right.
And what we experience is ourselves in this threefold manner.
Right.
Bang.
Love it.
Question 17. How does understanding your type lead to personal growth?
Well, awareness of our own behavior is one of the first steps toward any kind of growth. And the Enneagram is all about awareness.
Yeah.
And so becoming aware of how your inner motivations help you make decisions will help you see those decisions for what they are.
Yeah. oftentimes folks who are not self-aware don't understand how much their motive, energy, perspective, background affects how they see the world and come to the world. Everybody else is an idiot. They don't see the world the same way I do. But often that person who is saying that hasn't actually taken the time to look at how they see the world, why they've gotten there. What is your race? What is your background? What is your gender? How is it that all these things influence how you see the world? Same story with Enneagram. Personal growth means understanding yourself, and what Enneagram does is it takes your eyeballs out and allows you to look at yourself for a second and say, oh, this is how I'm coming to the world.
Right.
Question 18. What is the relationship between the Enneagram and emotional intelligence?
There is certainly overlap, but I don't know that there is necessarily a direct relationship.
Yeah.
Enneagram will help inform emotional intelligence, but I don't think it decides emotional intelligence.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think in the same way, like IQ isn't determined by your Enneagram type. You can have incredibly intelligent people across the board. How your relationships function, and especially what you want in your relationships, is going to be influenced by your Enneagram type. But whether or not you are aware of other people and how they function and how to engage them, that's probably going to be a different sphere.
Yeah. And in the same way that IQ is not a determinant for whether or not you are a good person, EQ is not a determinant for whether or not you're a good person. You can be very good at understanding other people's emotions, and you can use that for evil.
Yeah. In fact, some of the worst people
are
probably incredibly intelligent with their emotional intelligence.
Yep.
Question 19. How do cultural factors influence the manifestation of Enneagram types?
That is an excellent question. Ask me again in 5 years.
That is one of those. It's so Enneagram ends up being one of those sets of glasses through which you see the world. This is your motive. But I mentioned it in an earlier question. Your gender affects how you see the world. Your race affects how you see the world. The fact that I'm a 21st century American, cultural factors influence how I see the world. I've been really getting into books about generations. I'm a Gen X kid, and that influences, how I come to the world with my priorities, even, and it kind of overlaps in some ways for me.
Yeah.
Question 20. In what ways can the Enneagram be applied in organizational development?
Again, back to that awareness piece. I think understanding how you behave in certain scenarios and then getting into why will help you interact with other people better. And if the other people also know their stuff, then the more people working on their own, being aware of and working on their own inner life, the better the organization is going to be.
Yeah, agreed. But we have friends who do this for a living and to teach organizations how to apply the Enneagram in those contexts. It can be incredibly helpful. Folks have put their numbers on their, with their nameplate on their door, that just became part of the culture to know these things. If you really get into Enneagram and are going to use it, it can create, for me, just more empathy, more understanding, both in an organization or in a family. That can be one of the big helps there. And having more empathy for people is always a good thing in an organization.
Yep. And we see this with all kinds of different personality systems that are currently in use in organizations all over the world.
Yeah.
And if you know that the person across the hall from you is not going to respond well to being interrupted because of their type, then you know that you shouldn't interrupt them. Right?
Yep. There it is.
Yeah.
Question 21. How do you explain the difference between behavior and motivation in the context of the Enneagram?
I say behavior is the way that you act and motivation is the reason.
Yeah. Real important, though, to make that distinction.
Yes.
Because so often when looking at other people, all we can see is behavior. We can't necessarily see somebody's motive. That's why Enneagram's really valuable. It's like opening up that whole world and saying, no, there's something behind all this. So you can have 3 people who rob a bank, right? The behavior is the same. We are going to rob the bank. But why are they robbing the bank? Well, this person, is doing it for greed. And this person is doing it, because they're terrified of, their buddy who's making them rob the bank. And this person, is doing it for, just because they're kind of a violent guy.
It's not about money. It's about sending a message.
That's right. I mean, put in, go treat yourself. Go watch some Tarantino. Go put on Reservoir Dogs and just notice the motivation behind all of these men going and robbing. I think they're getting diamonds. It's all very different.
Yeah.
Question 22. What role do defense mechanisms play within the Enneagram framework?
That's too vague.
Of all things, this was going to be part of our discussion today. Let me define defense mechanisms for us, because I thought this was interesting. So in some of the literature, this from Beth McCord's book, More Than Your Number, she wants to say that defense and I suppose it's Beth and Jeff McCord wrote this. So here would be some examples of defense mechanism. Type 3's defense mechanism is identification. They write that their inner life fears being rejected for being themselves, so it embodies the admirable qualities of desirable people. Type 4's defense mechanism is introjection. Instead of blocking out negative information, their inner life fully internalizes it into their sense of self, making it difficult for them to distinguish between reality and fantasy. A good one, since she's a 9. Type 9, your defense mechanism is narcotizing. To maintain peace and harmony, your inner life avoids conflict at all costs by numbing and checking out. These are examples of defense mechanisms. That is on page 102 of More Than Your Number. I think it's... What is that? It's a helpful list. Is that the negative side of your number, the excess of your number? I don't even know where to put that in my framework. Question's going to be way more than a minute 30, that's for sure.
I think that the defense mechanisms, especially the ones laid out by the McCords, are part of how we have automatically learned to protect ourselves. And one of the great things about the Enneagram is showing us that. When I am freaking out, my favorite thing is to just disappear into a TV show and stop. Like I just disengage.
Yeah.
That's what narcotizing is. It's trying to let's drink until we can't feel feelings anymore, right? And so these defense mechanisms are part of what is keeping us alive. And as we get older, they become less and less useful, less and less effective. And so Enneagram is trying to show us, oh, this is the thing that you do automatically. And as you learn about that, become more and more aware of it, then you can stop automatically falling into that defense mechanism and figure out when is the appropriate time to do this.
Yep. To build on that, I'd mentioned attachment theory in a different question, but there are some folks who want to talk about childhood wounds being the creative place that your type kind of emerges from, that somehow there's a lack and type emerges. This is just one theory. Type emerges from those spaces of we're not getting what we need, because you can't say what you want, because want is about motive. So
right.
It's somehow you're not getting what you need, and then the type emerges and establishes your response to lack, and then your type emerges and your wants emerge.
Yeah.
And I think defense mechanism, as you were saying, is in that space. It's like you're defending against those spaces where you really early on felt like holes, and now you're overly aware of this. So
right.
You and I, TJ and I, in our second book that's coming out, are going to spend a lot of time on fears and hazards and what each of the types kind of struggle with on these fronts, things that we avoid. And I suppose that would be kind of our language, but
yeah.
Bang. Question 23. How can the Enneagram enhance self-awareness?
if you're using it right, that's the only thing it does.
Yeah.
Is enhances self-awareness.
Yeah, there you go. How doesn't it enhance self-awareness? Yeah. And actually, I think once you get into the Enneagram a little bit further, it can kind of cloud. You'd said this before, that like Enneagram can be used as an excuse for bad behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Some people who are really Enneagram formed will in fact maybe coast past. Well, I do this because I'm a one.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, and you're not really being self-aware.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, how doesn't it?
Right. Yeah. Coast past the things, but that's drawing from the Enneagram the things that you want.
Mm-hmm.
And you're at that point, you're not using the Enneagram.
Oh, there you go.
You're looking at a list of qualities that you want to be part of yourself.
Yeah.
So I feel like most of my desire to make fun of the AI is born out of the repeats that we're not mentioning, and like the poorly worded questions that we're just skipping. And
yes.
That all of that just to I want to make sure it's known that I do not trust AI.
I wouldn't trust AI either, except for it's fantastic at putting in our entire script and saying, please kick me out a description of our YouTube video. And all of a sudden I got hashtags, I got links. I don't have to spend 2 seconds thinking about this. And one that I would have overthought this the entire time. So thank you,
fair.
AI gods, for... Question 24. How does the Enneagram explain the dynamics of conflict resolution?
I think one of the things that can be missing from a lot of people's attempts at conflict resolution is the ability to name the way that other people see.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So much conflict is entirely about people seeing differently, and not understanding that other people don't see the same way.
Yep. Again, Again, Enneagram's about motive, and oftentimes our conflicts emerge because we're not getting what we want from the other person. And so being able to name, this is what I want, this is what you want, is like just core to conflicts being resolved.
Yep.
Question 25. Can the Enneagram be integrated into couples counseling?
Yeah, heck yeah.
For the
I don't
above
have
reasons.
anything more to say about that. Yes.
In fact,
that's a dumb question, AI. Get out of here.
Can it be AI? It should be. This should be one of the primary starting spots. Because actually in couples counseling, what's going to happen is Enneagram's going to tell you how you fight and how you resolve conflicts and how you problem solve. So some of us, when problem solving, for example, are really going to get emotional and act on our emotions. 4, 6s, and 8s. Some of us are going to be very heady and act on our headiness, 1s, 3s, and 5s. Some of us are going to spin things positive, want things to just be on the up and up, 2, 7s, and 9s. Just knowing that is going to be a ton of like naming how you fight, how you disagree with your partner. It's probably going to come out in just that short description alongside 28 other things the Enneagram unveils. Well, hey, guess what?
What?
Well, 3 things for our listeners is what I was going to say. 1, the second half of this conversation is up and posted at aroundthecircle.org. And as a holiday gift, it is free. Aroundthecircle.org. If you sign up to be a free member, you will get this and lots of other cool stuff that we're going to be releasing in the year to come. And the link for this is in the show notes. If you can't remember, aroundthecircle.org. Second, it would mean the world to us if you would share this episode with somebody you love. Preferably somebody who's getting into Enneagram just wants, like, they probably have 10 of these questions on their minds. Worth sharing. Lastly, we have 2 other podcasts. One on pop culture, which is movie typing. Just look up movie typing and look for our Enneagram symbol. Or specifically, if you have friends who are looking to find their type, go send them our Start Here podcast. This is our tool for finding your Enneagram type. We think it works. We have gotten lots of great feedback from it. And so send it to those that you love and jump in. And that's what I got. You got anything else?
I got nothing, man.
Did this work?
Yeah, I think so.
Work fine?
Yeah. Guess we'll see in the editing bay.
We'll see if this chops up into what Jeff was hoping for. Otherwise, it's just going to be an Enneagram podcast called 50 Questions.
Yeah, that's fine.
50 questions generated by our AI overlords.
Yeah, that's what we should call it.
Unfortunately, it's going to work its way in. Well, he's TJ Wilson. He's officially awesome. I'm Jeff Cook. And who you aren't just isn't interesting.